So there are 3 racket weights for the Victor Thruster FC Ultra, the 3U, 4U and 5U models. And these rackets also broke the record for the slimmest shaft that I have ever measured on this channel, which is over 150 rackets already. So Victor released this racket a little while ago and it's currently played by quite a few of their sponsored players, namely Jonatan Christie, who recently won the Hyla Open, which is a Super 500 World Tour event. And so besides him, there's also quite a few other men's singles players playing with this, and it is differentiated very quickly by the thickness of the racket shaft as well as the power core ring. So visually there's only 2 indicators of what model they are, if it's 3U, 4U or 5U. The 3U model carries a 6mm shaft and the 4U does a 5.8mm shaft and the 5U comes in a 5.6mm shaft. Obviously, in terms of real world measurements, I got the 3U model at 6.2mm, but the 4U and 5U model got it down to 5.9mm, and that makes it the thinnest shaft ever recorded on my channel here. In the world of badminton rackets, shaft thickness generally is around 6.5 to 7mm. So like the higher end rackets generally go slightly thinner, but actually 7 to 7.2mm is actually quite the norm for a lot of the high end manufacturers here. Rackets nowadays have a solid core or a hollow core. Hollow core rackets generally tend to be slightly thicker in terms of the shaft thickness, but then this one, it never actually really said. It actually never said that if it's a hollow core or a solid core, but it sounds like a solid core here. But generally to the average player, sometimes thinner shafts also mean it's a little bit more flexible. It has that little bit of a whippy feeling. In the world of slim racket shafts, slimmer doesn't necessarily mean it's better. However, generally it swings a little bit smoother, swings a little bit faster, often comes at the expense of ultimate stiffness or ultimate stability. We'll find out with this one later during the playtest. But in terms of the visual side of things, 6.0, 5.8 and 5.6mm. And the second bit that you can actually see is the power ring inside the racket cone in the free core handle. Obviously, I play with 2 layers of wraps, especially for bare free core handles. If a racket that comes in already with its original grip, I will then add 1 layer of wrap on. But if it's completely bare, like the free core handle, then I will have 2 layers on just for additional comfort here. And so the 3U has a Power Ring Pro. And the 4U only has a power ring and the 5U has none of these things. And you can actually see them from the racket cap that's in here. Now you could also say that the Power Ring Pro or Power Ring adds a few grams to the actual overall racket, that does make it a 3U or 4U. You might be right. Obviously, I've also measured all their swing weights in terms of specs from all 3 rackets when they're bare and strung, as well as after adding 2 layers of grips here. In terms of the racket frame, the Thruster F series tends to have this little eggy shape, which is slightly taller in terms of racket frame compared to their other usual rackets. Taller frames also generally means a slightly bigger sweet spot normally, and so that's actually a really good thing. The Thruster F's racket head is also transferred across to the Thruster Taiziying, the Thruster TTY racket series, and so you also find this similar racket frame shape across to all her rackets there. The rackets are also rated for swing tensions up to 30, 31 and 32 pounds for the 5U, 4U and 3U rackets respectively. Obviously for me, I then have it all strung with my usual racket string setup, which is the Aerobite at 27 by 29 pounds. Want to protect your rackets from chips, scratches and even potential cracks? Have peace of mind with the premium racket protection tape from ckydw.com/shop. They're almost invisible and gives your racket the extra layer of protection in case of scrapes and or worse, a clash. So go check them out, and we also have some limited edition signed prints there too. So in terms of play, my usual racket weight is the 4U racket. So obviously I started with that one. I found that this racket was very nice, especially with new strings. It does feel a bit crispy, but obviously a little bit hollow from the racket handle side of things. I also noticed that there was a slight difference in terms of hitting timing than what I'm normally used to. So normally in terms of hitting timing, I tend to want to aim for around the middle of the racket, but actually I felt that for this one here, I needed to aim for slightly higher around that side of things, where that gave me a little bit more consistency in terms of hitting feel. It's probably just because I wasn't really used to the slightly bigger racket head size when I first initially started testing, but after a little bit of time, I obviously found that it was perfectly fine in terms of timing. You will have no issues after a little bit of transition from there. In terms of the 4U racket, it was very lovely for power shots, really easy to generate power, but if you're used to something like Yonex racket's stiffness and response from the stiffer racket, you might want to change your hitting timing a little bit to take those shots a little bit earlier, as there's a little bit more flex around the handle and the cone area, or at least that's what I feel. However, if you catch any shots in the sweet spot of this racket, there's a lot of power coming in very naturally and you will have no issues. So I really recommend you focusing on using your finger and finger squeezing short, sharp strokes for all of those powers. However, one more thing is when you're really under pressure, I felt that this racket was slightly head heavy. Yeah, you really have to focus on using the fingers, squeezing, short, sharp timing. That will really help you from that side of things, staying relaxed. In one of the training sessions, we had a 30-shot rally, and I felt very tired after that kind of rallies with these rackets. If we then move on to the 5U model, for example, which this one is, I found that the 5U model, generally I struggle to generate a lot of power with the 5U rackets, but in terms of measurements coming from the swing weight machine, this one was quite identical, very close to the 4U model. But yes, I generally struggle to generate a lot of raw power with 5U rackets, and so I had to really focus and try and get more power, especially during, say, jump smash training sessions, where I'm really wanting to move my body weight forward, just so that I can maximize those. But 5U generally is a very fast racket, absolutely no issue, but I personally struggle to get a lot of raw power from it. It's fun because it's faster in terms of counter-attacking and defense, but then if you want real raw power and a lot of control, maybe try and go for the 4U and the 3U. In terms of the 3U, this is the big daddy of them all, a lot of natural weight here, and so you will not struggle with raw power at all, and actually feels really nice and really solid from the hitting feel and hitting sound that's coming off the racket, even though every one of these three have the same strings and same string setup, same tension as well, but the 3U is the big daddy of them all. Anything coming from top down, front is really nice, but sometimes if you're going up, a lot of defense work, if you don't really have really excellent timing or technique, you might be feeling a little bit tired in your deltoids or in terms of your arms if you've been using it a lot. Yeah, 3U, absolutely easy to get so much power from it, but I think in terms of recovery, that's the main key issues. If you're really strong in terms of technique and physicality, I think 3U is a good option, but if not, 4U might be a better option for you. I think one thing that I was quite impressed with was actually how well it tracks across versions of the racket in terms of different weights. Normally when you have three different classes of weight rackets, it almost feels a completely different racket, but then this one, I think they've been quite good at being able to track the performance from the 5U to the 4U to the 3U, and all three of them feels like they're very similar rackets in terms of performance, just in terms of weight and actually raw power, which is actually correlated to begin with anyway. So I think the conclusion is, are these three nice rackets? Yes, they are. Actually, it's rare that actually a flagship racket gives you this many options in terms of racket weights. You probably normally get 2, 3U or the 4U or 4U or the 5U. So I guess this is actually great for the consumer side of things. It's been nice playing with these rackets, and so absolutely I would happily recommend you guys, if you're out looking for a head-heavy racket that is wanting easy power, also a flagship series as well. So if you're looking for something that's slightly head heavy, that has a lot of raw power in the 3U and the 4U range, go and check these out. Absolutely no issue with them. You want a little bit more speed, go for the 5 weight. Obviously they'll feel a little bit more head heavy compared to raw rackets. They track very well in terms of performance, in terms of different weight classes, so absolutely no issues there. Enjoy. If you have any questions, put it down in the comment section below, and I'll see you in the next one.